Redefining strength begins with rejecting the idea that power can only be measured by how much a woman resembles a man's way of leading, fighting, or surviving. For generations, the narrative has been that strength is about toughness, aggression, and dominance, but this is only one lens. True feminine power exists in forms that are often overlooked because they do not fit into the narrow definition of what society has called strength. The courage, grace, and resilience unique to women are not just alternatives to strength, they are strength itself in its most enduring form. Courage is not simply the ability to confront danger head-on, it is also the silent bravery of stepping into the unknown, of enduring pain, of holding steady when the world expects you to break. A woman who chooses to stand for her beliefs in a room that wants her to remain silent is exercising courage. A mother who sacrifices her comfort for the growth of her children carries courage in ways that cannot be captured by titles or trophies. A leader who chooses to speak with compassion when anger would be easier demonstrates courage at a level that reshapes cultures. Feminine courage is not about mimicking aggression, but about meeting life's challenges with the kind of steady strength that builds rather than destroys. Grace is another underestimated element of feminine strength. Grace is not about being soft-spoken or submissive, it is about composure in the face of storms. It is the ability to choose kindness when resentment would be justified, the ability to maintain dignity when disrespected, and the ability to forgive not because one is weak, but because one refuses to let bitterness become the master of their life. Grace is often invisible, but it changes the atmosphere of every space it enters. It makes others feel safe, seen, and valued, and this is no small feat in a world that often thrives on conflict and division. A graceful woman is not one who bows down to pressure, but one who lifts others through her presence, her words, and her ability to rise above negativity. Resilience is perhaps the most defining feature of feminine power. Resilience is not simply surviving hardships, but turning those hardships into stepping stones for growth. History is filled with examples of women who endured oppression, loss, and struggle, yet they rose not only for themselves, but for those who came after them. Resilience is waking up after failure and deciding to try again. It is carrying the scars of past battles yet still choosing to live with hope. It is rebuilding after loss, reimagining after rejection, and refusing to let the weight of pain crush the spirit. Resilience is not about pretending everything is fine, it is about facing the truth and still choosing to move forward. What makes feminine strength unique is the harmony of these three forces: courage, grace, and resilience working together. Unlike the narrow form of strength often celebrated in the world, which thrives on control and dominance, feminine power thrives on connection, healing, and transformation. It does not seek to overpower but to empower. It does not destroy to prove itself but builds so others can thrive. Feminine strength redefines what it means to be powerful by showing that softness and strength can exist in the same body, in the same spirit, in the same voice. When women embrace this kind of strength, they stop competing with men's definition of power and begin creating their own. They stop asking permission to be themselves and begin leading with authenticity. They no longer apologize for their emotions, their empathy, or their softness because they understand these are not flaws. They are the very essence of the power they carry. Redefining strength is not about changing who women are. It is about reclaiming what has always been their seat, the right to lead with courage, to live with grace, and to rise with resilience. The myth of weakness begins with the way society has conditioned people to view softness as fragile and incapable, when in reality softness is one of the strongest forces in existence. From a young age, many are taught that to be strong is to be tough, unshaken, and almost unfeeling, while to be soft is to be vulnerable, fragile, and powerless. This false belief has silenced countless individuals, especially women, and has convinced them to suppress their natural compassion and emotional depth in order to fit into an image of strength that was never meant for them. Yet when we look deeper, compassion and emotional depth are not liabilities. They are among the most powerful and transformative strengths a human being can possess. Softness is not weakness because it takes immense courage to remain open in a world that repeatedly gives reasons to shut down. It is easy to become hard, to numb feelings, or to put up walls as protection from hurt. But it takes a greater kind of bravery to stay open, to keep feeling, to continue offering love and kindness even after experiencing pain. A person who can still give compassion after betrayal, loss, or heartbreak demonstrates strength at a level that cannot be measured in physical terms. They are proving that their heart, no matter how many times tested, cannot be broken beyond repair. That is not weakness, it is resilience in its most refined form. Compassion itself is a force that shapes lives and societies. It is through compassion that wounds are healed, bridges are built, and conflicts are softened. The ability to look beyond one's own needs and consider the pain, perspective, or struggles of others requires not only awareness but also a strength of character that is rare. Compassion moves people to take action when it would be easier to turn away. Compassion demands patience when judgment would be faster. Compassion challenges the ego, requiring humility, self-control, and generosity. None of these qualities are weak. In fact, they demand discipline that many people are unwilling to develop. The strength to care is often more difficult to cultivate than the ability to fight. Emotional depth is also misunderstood as fragility when in truth it is a source of clarity and wisdom. To feel deeply means to process life at a level many cannot reach. Emotional depth allows a person to empathize, to connect authentically, and to lead with insight that goes beyond surface appearances. Those who feel deeply often notice subtleties in behavior, energy, or truth that others ignore. This level of awareness brings with it an ability to navigate relationships, challenges, and conflicts in ways that logic alone cannot achieve. It is not weakness to feel intensely. It is a gift that gives a person the ability to understand humanity on a deeper level. The weight of emotions can be heavy, but the ability to carry them and still move forward proves immense strength. Society has long celebrated external displays of power, physical dominance, authority, wealth, and control, while dismissing inner strength as weakness. But external power can fade, while the strength of compassion and emotional depth endures. A compassionate leader can inspire loyalty far more effectively than a harsh one. A deeply empathetic person can resolve conflicts that aggression could only worsen. A woman or man who embraces emotional depth can create bonds of trust that no amount of control could ever buy. These abilities are not soft in the sense of fragile, they are soft in the sense of enduring, shaping, and transforming. Softness bends, but it does not break. When people embrace softness as strength, they begin to realize that it is not about being passive or submissive. It is about choosing humanity over hardness, connection over isolation, and healing over destruction. It is about recognizing that the ability to love, forgive, empathize, and nurture requires more courage than the ability to fight, dominate, or destroy. The myth of weakness fades when we understand that what the world calls fragile is actually the foundation of everything that makes us human, everything that builds trust, everything that sustains love, and everything that allows us to endure hardship without losing ourselves. Balance over battle is a principle that reshapes the very definition of strength, because true strength has never been about aggression or dominance. Society often glorifies the loudest voice, the hardest fist, and the most unshakable posture as if power is only proven in battle. Yet in reality, the ability to balance empathy with boundaries and love with leadership is a far greater strength than the ability to overpower others. It is easy to fight, but it is much harder to create balance in a world that constantly pulls people toward extremes. Empathy without boundaries can leave a person drained and taken advantage of, while boundaries without empathy can make them cold, disconnected, and difficult to trust. Strength lies in holding both at once. The open heart that understands others and the steady spine that refuses to be bent beyond its values. A balanced individual listens deeply, but does not allow their compassion to become an invitation for exploitation. They give generously, but know when to say no. They extend kindness, but do not compromise their self-respect. This is not weakness. It is strength in its most intelligent form. To navigate human connection with both warmth and clarity takes discipline, courage, and wisdom far more than aggression ever requires. The same truth applies to love and leadership. Love alone can inspire, but without leadership, it may lack direction. Leadership alone can guide, but without love, it can easily slip into control or fear. When combined, love and leadership create influence that lasts because people do not simply follow rules. They follow hearts that make them feel valued. A leader who operates with love builds trust, but a leader who knows when to stand firm ensures that the trust is not abused. To love while leading means to care deeply about those you guide, but also to hold them accountable when they fall short. This duality creates growth, because it combines the nourishment of compassion with the structure of discipline. Aggression may win battles, but balance wins respect. Aggression may silence a room, but balance earns influence that lingers even when the person is not present. Aggression thrives on fear, but balance thrives on trust. When someone is balanced, they can command authority without raising their voice. They can create safety without controlling others. They can be firm without being harsh, and soft without being weak. This is strength at its highest expression, because it does not rely on force, but on the integrity of character. Balance is also a form of internal strength. A person who cannot balance their own emotions, thoughts, and energy becomes a prisoner of extremes. They may swing from excessive giving to shutting down, or from being overly controlling to withdrawing completely. True strength is the ability to regulate oneself, to remain calm in chaos, and to choose response over reaction. To carry empathy without losing boundaries and to carry authority without losing kindness requires a level of self-awareness that aggression alone can never provide. In relationships, balance is the foundation of lasting love. A relationship where one person dominates will eventually crumble under the weight of control, while one where boundaries are absent will collapse under resentment. Love that is balanced with leadership allows both people to feel safe, respected, and free to grow. This is the kind of love that does not suffocate but empowers, does not demand but inspires, and does not weaken but strengthens both individuals. Balance over battle also applies to how one faces the world. Life will always present conflicts, challenges, and injustices, but meeting every situation with aggression only perpetuates destruction. Meeting it with balance, understanding when to yield and when to stand firm, creates solutions rather than chaos. Balance seeks harmony where aggression seeks victory, and in the long run, harmony sustains while victory fades. The strongest individuals are not those who conquer every opponent, but those who know when to fight, when to let go, when to open their hearts, and when to protect their peace. Balance is not the absence of strength, but the mastery of it. Inner authority is one of the most powerful qualities a woman can carry because it allows her to move through life without constantly seeking permission, approval, or validation from the outside world. From the time girls are young, they are often conditioned to measure themselves by external standards. Beauty defined by magazines, success defined by society, and worth defined by relationships or recognition. This constant dependence on outside approval creates a fragile identity, one that rises when praised and falls when criticized. A woman who discovers her inner authority breaks free from this cycle, because her worth is no longer tied to shifting opinions, but rooted in the unshakable ground of her own values. To live with inner authority means to recognize that no one else has the power to define who you are. Family, culture, or society may try to shape an image of the ideal woman, but a strong woman understands that those definitions are temporary and often limiting. She does not bend herself to fit into an image designed by others. She builds a life that reflects her truth. This requires courage because standing in one's own values often means standing alone. Yet it is in this solitude that true power is born, because it is here that a woman learns her voice matters whether or not the world claps for it. External validation may feel rewarding, but it is fleeting. Compliments fade, applause stops, and approval shifts with trends and moods. If a woman builds her worth on these things, she will forever chase them, losing herself in the process. Inner authority, however, is permanent. It comes from knowing one's principles, passions, and priorities, and refusing to betray them even when the world tempts her to do so. A strong woman measures her life not by how others perceive her, but by whether she is aligned with her own truth. This alignment creates peace, because there is no longer a battle between who she is and who she pretends to be. The beauty of inner authority is that it cannot be taken away. Jobs can be lost, relationships can end, and reputations can shift, but values remain. A woman who defines herself by her values remains steady in the face of change. She is not crushed when others reject her, because she knows rejection does not erase her worth. She is not inflated by praise, because she knows praise does not create her worth either. She walks a steady path, unaffected by the tides of opinion, because her compass points inward, not outward. Living with inner authority also changes the way a woman leads and loves. Instead of manipulating others for approval, she inspires trust through authenticity. Instead of performing roles to please others, she shows up as herself, which encourages others to do the same. Instead of fearing judgment, she accepts that judgment is inevitable and refuses to let it dictate her choices. This kind of presence commands respect, not because it demands it, but because it radiates integrity. People may not always agree with a woman who holds inner authority, but they cannot help but admire her. Inner authority is not arrogance. It is not about believing one is better than others or refusing to listen. It is about listening deeply, but deciding ultimately based on what resonates with one's values. It is about respecting others without abandoning oneself. It is about leading from the inside out, where strength comes from alignment rather than control. It is the difference between living for show and living for substance. When a woman builds her life on inner authority, she becomes unshakable. She is no longer swayed by criticism, no longer trapped by comparison, and no longer chained to the need for applause. She carries herself with quiet confidence, the kind that does not need to shout because it is rooted in truth. She knows her worth is not given by the world, so it cannot be taken away by it. Breaking labels begins with understanding how much power words have carried in shaping the way women see themselves. For generations, women have been reduced to simplistic descriptions, too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, as if their ability to feel deeply and express openly were flaws that needed to be corrected. These labels were not only dismissive, but also controlling, designed to silence voices, diminish confidence, and encourage conformity. Yet when these labels are looked at more closely, they reveal something different. They are not signs of weakness, but hidden complements that point to the strength of emotional awareness, empathy, and authenticity. What has been used to shame women can, in truth, become a source of pride. Being called too emotional is often an accusation that a woman cares too much, feels too deeply, or expresses too openly. But emotions are not weaknesses. They are signals of what matters most. To feel sadness means to understand the depth of loss. To feel anger means to recognize injustice. To feel joy means to appreciate the fullness of life and to connect beyond surface appearances. Emotions fuel action, creativity, and connection. A leader who cannot feel remains detached, but a leader who understands emotions can inspire, unite, and heal. When society labels a woman as too emotional, it is often because her presence exposes truths others would rather ignore. Her emotions shine light on problems people prefer to stay hidden, and that is not fragility. It is power. The same is true for the label too sensitive. Sensitivity has been misunderstood as fragility, when in reality it is a heightened awareness of the environment, the emotions of others, and the subtle shifts in energy that many overlook. A sensitive woman notices details others miss, feels the pain that others suppress, and connects with people at a level deeper than appearances. This sensitivity is not a weakness, but a gift that allows for greater empathy, understanding, and compassion. To be sensitive is to have antennae finely tuned to the human experience, which is why sensitive people often become healers, creators, and visionaries. The world may call them fragile, but their ability to absorb and process so much emotional information is evidence of incredible inner strength. These labels also carry with them an unintended acknowledgement that women who are called too emotional or too sensitive are living authentically. They are not hiding behind masks or performing roles to fit in. They are showing up as they are, without apology, even when their truth makes others uncomfortable. Authenticity is rare in a world that rewards conformity, and it takes courage to be real when pretense is easier. A woman who refuses to mute her emotions or dull her sensitivity is choosing to live aligned with her truth rather than bend to others' expectations. That is leadership at its core, because true leadership begins with the courage to lead oneself authentically. Breaking labels also means recognizing the double standards they reveal. A man who shows passion is seen as driven, but a woman who does the same is called emotional. A man who shows awareness of others is praised as empathetic, but a woman with the same quality is dismissed as sensitive. These contradictions expose how labels are often weapons of control, not accurate reflections of reality. The act of rejecting these labels is therefore an act of reclaiming power. It is saying, if you call me too emotional, I will wear it as proof of my humanity. If you call me too sensitive, I will embrace it as a sign of my awareness. When women stop shrinking under the weight of these words and begin reframing them, they turn insults into strengths. Too emotional becomes a compliment for having the courage to feel. Too sensitive becomes recognition for being deeply connected to the world around them. Too dramatic becomes acknowledgement of passion and expression. Each label, once broken, reveals not a flaw but a quality that makes leadership authentic, relationships deeper, and life more meaningful. A new definition of womanhood is emerging, one that no longer confines women to the rigid molds of either being soft and submissive or hard and unyielding. For too long, strength in women has been equated with toughness alone, as if to prove themselves capable, they had to shed every trace of softness, vulnerability, and emotion. But this old view is crumbling because it denies the very essence of what makes women powerful. The future of womanhood is not about imitating toughness as the world defines it. It is about unapologetic authenticity, where vulnerability and courage are not opposites, but companions that create a deeper, more powerful form of strength. Authenticity lies at the heart of this new definition. Authentic women no longer seek to perform roles handed to them by tradition, culture, or society. Instead, they choose to live in alignment with who they truly are without apology or disguise. This authenticity is not always comfortable because it often challenges expectations. A woman who chooses career over convention or family over ambition, or both without compromise, is declaring that her worth is not tied to what others believe she should be. She is claiming the freedom to write her own story, one where success is measured by her values rather than by outdated standards. Vulnerability, once labeled as weakness, now becomes part of this definition because it takes courage to be real in a world that rewards masks. Vulnerability is the willingness to be seen as you are, to admit fears, to show emotions, and to risk rejection without losing your voice. It is not weakness to say, I hurt, I care, or if I dream, because these are the truths that connect people at their deepest level. When a woman embraces vulnerability, she becomes more relatable, more human, and more powerful because she inspires others to do the same. Vulnerability opens doors that toughness alone can never unlock because it creates trust. Courage is the companion of vulnerability in this new vision of womanhood. It is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Courage shows up when a woman speaks up in a room where she is not expected to have a voice, when she walks away from a situation that disrespects her, or when she takes risks that others tell her are impossible. Courage allows vulnerability to exist without shame and authenticity to shine without restraint. It is courage that gives a woman the ability to say, this is who I am, even when the world resists her truth. This redefined womanhood is also about integration rather than division. Women are no longer forced to choose between being strong or being soft, between being leaders or being nurturers. They can be both, because true strength is not about denial but about wholeness. A woman can be ambitious and compassionate, resilient and tender, authoritative and empathetic. She can lead in the workplace with determination while still leading in her family with love. This integration destroys the false dichotomy that has long restricted women's identities and reveals that womanhood is not about choosing roles but embracing fullness. The future of womanhood also shifts the conversation from comparison to self-definition. It is no longer about proving women can do what men can do, but about proving they can do what only they can do, in the way that is uniquely theirs. This is not competition, it is creation. Women are no longer defined by how closely they can match a man's toughness, but by how unapologetically they can live their authenticity. Their measure of success is no longer external validation, but the alignment between their actions, values, and truth. In this future, womanhood is not bound by toughness alone, but by a deeper kind of power that blends vulnerability and courage into authenticity. It is a power that does not need to ask permission, does not need to hide, and does not need to conform. It is a power that comes from being fully oneself, unapologetically and without compromise.